Hey, it's me, the Quenchies. I'm that late afternoon craving you just can't shake. Wait, what's that? Welch's Grape Aid? No! Made with real fruit and no added sugar, nothing answers the call of the Quenchies like Grape Aid. Got the Quenchies? Grab a Grape Aid in your juice aisle.
Wishing for a body wash made with natural ingredients? Dr. Squatch has got you covered. Manly scents that make you irresistible, a thick lather that leaves your skin moisturized all day. No matter what you're looking for in a body wash, rest assured Dr. Squatch is your best bet. Pick up one today in store or at drsquatch.com. It's Dr. Squatch Body Wash for men who prefer natural.
At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner. However you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
We want to warn you that this podcast contains disturbing content. It's a December evening in 1988. After several years abroad, trying to escape from her terrible memories, Katie Callaway has returned to South Lake Tahoe in California, and she's working again at one of the city's casinos. This evening, she's sitting at the roulette table at Harrah's.
And she suddenly looks up and she's sure she sees Philip Garrido staring at her, and she freezes. I mean, and she's convinced it's him.
I don't cry wolf. I don't scare easy like that. But this man walked up to my table, and I instinctively recognized something about him. He said, "Hello, Katie," and I said, "Hello."
He asks her how long she's been working and how long she's been in South Lake Tahoe. And then he says,
"This is my first drink in 11 years.
Around Katie, everything is going on as usual. People are playing, having a drink. But for Katie, reality freezes.
He never placed a bet. He leaned over the table and he said, "Hope to see you again real soon, Katie."
Can it really be that he's been released again after just 11 years? Katie knows that he's supposed to be in prison for 33 years, at least. She doesn't understand anything.
When I got on my next break, I went immediately to a payphone and started calling around until I found out that he had been released from Lompoc Penitentiary and he was at a halfway house in Oakland.
So now Katie knows that the man who raped her for over 5 hours is out of prison and a free man. And she's completely convinced that he just sought her out. Who else could it be? So she also calls Philip Garrido's supervisor.
And he says, "Well, what do you want to know about him?" He says he got a degree in psychology. He thinks he's very smart. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. And the thing is, when he doesn't get his way, his whole persona changes. Now that was terrifying to me.
Because Katie recognizes that he can be so nice and then change in a second, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And when he wants to, he can also wrap almost anyone around his little finger.
He came up, to parole, and he said he totally changed his life. He now had a wife, and his mother had a house in Antioch, California, that he would move into and have a stable life from now on. He turned his back on drugs, and he'd seen the terrible things that it had done to him. He'd had psychiatric help, and the parole officer, he was turned down about 3 or 4 times, but finally he found a sympathetic parole board that, let him out. So he managed to get out, and beat the system.
But the supervisor that Katie talks to, he's still sure of one thing. This is not a man who should be allowed to go free.
He says, "You want me to tell you he's well? He's not. He's a sick puppy. We know it. We're on to him. We're pretty sure he's going to be a repeat offender. We're just pretty sure it's not directed at you."
And this supervisor probably doesn't realize how right he is. but it will take many, many years before anyone finds out. And for Katie Callaway, it doesn't matter what the supervisor says. She's terrified anyway.
And from then on, she's looking round her shoulder all the time that he's not following her. But it kind of, she's terrified after that for years.
You're listening to Girl Missing, a story in 6 parts about how a rapist and sex offender can manipulate an entire system and what dire consequences it can have. I'm Jonathan Rollins, and I'll be narrating this series. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to follow Crime by PodLit so you can find other exciting series we've made, and you'll get a notification when a new episode is released. But now you'll get to listen to Chapter 3, which is called He Strikes Again. You remember Jaycee Dugard, right? The girl born in 1980 after her mother, Terry, had a summer fling with a Vietnam veteran. In 1989, when Philip Garrido was just released from prison, she was about to turn 9. She was a sweet girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, but very shy, and her mother described her as introverted with not many friends. However, she and her mother were very, very close. Her mother, Terry, talks about this in the program Stolen Lives.
We were very, very close, like sisters. Introverted child, very shy. But once you did make friends, you made them for life. She was, she would pull you into her little world and you'd be your friend.
And I used to tease them, but I couldn't get a quarter between them on the couch. They were really close.
This is Jaycee Dugard's stepfather, Carl Probin, being interviewed in the documentary Captive for 18 Years. A couple of years earlier, Terry had met a new man, also a Vietnam veteran, actually, and moved in with him and eventually married him. At first, Jaycee was skeptical of her stepfather, as children can be, especially after living alone with her mother for so many years. But in 1989, Terry and Carl had a daughter, a little sister for Jaycee. Her name was Shayna, and Jaycee adored her and gladly helped babysit when needed. We hear John Glatt, author of the book Lost and Found.
So the family was complete.
In June of 1990, the new little family, Terry, Carl, Jaycee and Shayna, went on vacation to South Lake Tahoe and fell in love with the small town, surrounded by high mountains and the large, clear lake right next to it. With only around 20,000 inhabitants, the peace and quiet were a stark contrast to the constantly hectic Los Angeles. So the family simply decided to pack up and move there. We hear Jaycee's stepfather, Carl Probin, again in Captive for 18 Years.
We just decided to take the chance and move up here. The mountains and the clean air and a small town and just, away from the big city where it was just all cement, and someplace where we'd be safe, where the kids would be safe.
Yes, away from the big city, to a place where they and the children could be safe. In Orange County, Jaycee wasn't even allowed to walk to school on her own. Terry explains on the Geraldo Rivera show.
She wasn't allowed to walk to school. Carl was taking her in the morning and I was picking her up, and we didn't want to raise our girls like that, so we moved out of the big city.
But South Lake Tahoe would not become the calm and safe place the family longed for. Quite the opposite. But they didn't know that when they moved into their house on Washoan Boulevard on the outskirts of Lake Tahoe in September of 1990, surrounded by tall pine trees, so typical of this part of California. And Jaycee Dugard started 5th grade at Myers Elementary School.
She's every teacher's dream. I mean, she was responsive in class. She always did her work on time. She was cooperative, and she worked well with other kids.
Yes, Jaycee's teacher, Sue Lewis, describes her as a dream student in the program Stolen Lives. But she remained very shy, as her former classmates Megan Doris and Nicole Sipe tell Channel 4.
She was quiet, more on the quiet side.
Very soft-spoken.
Yeah, very soft-spoken.
Kind of kept to herself a little bit. She was a new kid.
Yeah.
So she didn't have tons of friends, but here we were all friends.
But she was pretty.
Blonde hair, blue eyes, very all-American girl, I guess you would want to call her.
Hello?
Yeah, make sure you leave your mouth open, Jaycee, and,
Hey.
In a home video from South Lake Tahoe that Carl filmed, you can see him teasing her playfully, trying to get her to say something. But Jaycee, shy and a little preteen, doesn't want to talk just because her stepfather asks her to.
Show us how you eat.
Even though Jaycee was shy and kept to herself initially, something changed during her first months in South Lake Tahoe.
Previously, she'd been shy in her other school when she was younger, but once they moved to South Lake Tahoe, she came out of herself and she had a whole new set of friends and seemed much happier.
Terry, Jaycee's mother, later said that Jaycee blossomed after moving to South Lake Tahoe. She joined the Girl Scouts and started playing on the soccer team. By Christmas of 1990, the family had truly settled in and found their place in the calm and beautiful town.
You could see the Christmas videos of Jaycee and her younger sister Shayna getting their presents and everything.
Shayna, look at Mommy. Oh, pretty baby.
In the video footage from Christmas morning, you see the little family laughing and opening presents. Terry puts on a Santa hat while the children tear at the wrapping paper. Jaycee gets a boombox, a portable cassette player, and is overjoyed.
Boombox!
What they didn't know then was that this would be the last Christmas the little family would spend together.
Run a restaurant and you learn pretty quick. The sound of a crisp fry starts way before the first bite. As delivery and to-go keeps business booming,
Order for pickup.
McCain's SureCrisp fries keep orders crispy.
Hey, delivery.
After the trip, the crispiness comes through. McCain's SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du noch?
If you've had that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
And I mean, it seemed like she was just the all-American girl and, having a good, great life, with a fabulous future in store for her.
Winter turned to spring, even though the family had to wait longer for it in South Lake Tahoe, where snow often lingered into March, but it eventually arrived. On May 3rd, 1991, Jaycee Lee Dugard celebrated her 11th birthday.
With a few of her best friends from school, so everything's looking very rosy.
On her birthday, Jaycee had a party for her closest friends at Round Table Pizza in South Lake Tahoe. She got a cake with 11 candles, which she blew out. Just a few days later, on Friday, June 7th, she was invited to a sleepover party for another friend who was also turning 11. In one photo, you can see Jaycee in a pink sweater and light blue pants, laughing with her friends. The shy, reserved girl seemed to be slowly leaving, making way for someone more open.
She was just coming out of her shell. She was just starting to enjoy life, and this tragedy happened to us.
That weekend, Carl, the man we just heard praising his stepdaughter, and his wife Terry, had a booth at a local art fair near their home.
And suddenly they notice there's a dark olive-skinned woman and acting suspiciously around the booth. It was noticed by some of the people at the fair.
Yes, in hindsight, several people talked about how they had seen a dark-haired woman sneaking around. She didn't seem to belong there, and no one knew who she was.
But they must have left an impression, you know.
On Monday, June 10th, 1991, as we've heard, things were a bit rushed in the Probin household. Jaycee's mother, Terry, was in a hurry not to be late for work. Jaycee Dugard tells Diane Sawyer on ABC.
She said that she'd give me a kiss goodbye. She didn't. I wasn't mad. I just, thought I'd catch her when I got home. Tell her, you gotta give me a kiss next time,
Jaycee's mother usually gave her a goodbye kiss, but not this morning. It wasn't the end of the world, though. After all, there would be tomorrow, Jaycee thought. She didn't know that tomorrow her mother wouldn't be able to kiss her goodbye, and not the day after either, or the one after that. No, she didn't know that, so she put on her favorite pink sweater and thought about something she had wanted to ask her mom.
I wanted to ask my mom if I could shave for the field trip.
Shave your legs?
Yeah.
Big question.
Didn't want to be
for her.
embarrassed. Yeah. Didn't want to be embarrassed. So that was the big question on my mind.
That's the kind of thing 11-year-old girls think about, whether or not they need to shave their legs for a school trip. But her mom had already left for work. Jaycee glanced at the microwave clock and headed out. She said goodbye to her stepfather, who was working in the garage.
Walked up the side of the hill. That was the safe way to go against traffic. And halfway up, my world changed in an instant.
She's walking along the hill and suddenly this car just comes straight, turns right in front of her.
The gray car stopped diagonally in front of her, and the door opened.
And his hand shoots out, and I just feel numb. My whole body is tingly. I don't know what it's from. I fall back in the bushes.
A woman had paralyzed Jaycee with a stun gun, and now she lay on the ground, seeing the tall trees above her. The last thing her hand touched was a pine cone as she tried to escape through the forest before losing consciousness. When she awakened, she was tied up on the floor of the car, blindfolded.
I remember my throat felt very dry and scratchy and like I had been screaming, but I don't remember screaming.
No, 11-year-old Jaycee was paralyzed with fear in the back seat of the car. What had just happened? At first, the man and woman in the front seat were silent, but then she heard them speak, as she told Diane Sawyer on ABC News.
After we were driving for a while, I heard the driver say, "I can't believe we got away with it." And he started laughing. I think I blacked out again or something. It was like the most horrible moment of your life times 10.
The car kept driving for what felt like an eternity, but in reality, it was only about 3 hours away. The car stopped on a dirt road in front of a medium-sized house, and Jaycee Lee Dugard was taken out of the car and saw the house that, from now on, would become her entire world. She hadn't said anything up until now, but she spoke.
I think it's probably one of the only things I said was, my family doesn't have a lot of money, they can't pay the ransom. That's what I kidnap as ransom, right? Yeah. No. Not always.
No, Not always, because this kidnapper didn't want money. He was after something entirely different. Meanwhile, panic had started to spread in the family on Washoe Boulevard. After trying to catch up to the gray Ford on his bike, Carl Probman got to talk to 911.
911? This is 911. On Pioneer Boulevard, the Washoe. My daughter was just kidnapped. Top of the hill was a gray Ford. A man and a woman in the car.
There was a man and a woman. In the passenger window, I could see a black-haired woman.
When the police received the report, they went to Terry Probin's workplace. She was sitting at her desk when an officer came up to her and said, "We have reason to believe your daughter has been kidnapped."
Basically, my wife collapsed. She was just beside herself.
Both Carl and Terry knew time was of the essence. Carl tells Channel 4.
Well, I knew they had a limited time to find her. I mean, normally, in cases like this, they find them a week later, or you got like 24 hours basically to find a kid.
Yes, there wasn't much time, but neither the police nor Carl and Terry knew that they were already far behind. The police did what they thought was right, as author John Glatt explains.
They seal off South Lake Tahoe from anything leaving, which was obviously, in hindsight, a big mistake because Philip Garrido had already left. So there was no way they were going to catch him by doing that.
No, the kidnapper, Philip Garrido, and his wife Nancy had already left South Lake Tahoe with Jaycee in their car. And there was another challenge. This was a different time. It was 1991, and communication wasn't what it is today.
There was no Amber Alert in those days, where the word could have gone out to other drivers. And there were no cell phones either where people would have got it. So Philip Garrido had a lot of advantages he wouldn't have had if he did that today.
No, there were no smartphones with push notifications asking people to look for a gray Ford Granada. But the news spread quickly in South Lake Tahoe anyway. Several children on the school bus had seen the entire kidnapping and were, of course, in shock, as schoolmate Nicole Sipe told Channel 4.
They got on the bus and they started screaming, she was taken, and then we weren't allowed to get off the bus, and we just stopped there.
At Jaycee's school, they had to deal with worried parents and children, as Karen Gillis Tinlin recalls.
Sickened. This just doesn't happen in Tahoe.
But it's a small community, and everyone knows everyone, so people immediately started to rally around Carl and Terry's horrible situation.
They get all their neighbors in the school and they all start searching, and Carl's going out looking for Jaycee, going around the streets and without any luck. The police do neighborhood watches and they put out pictures of Jaycee everywhere saying missing, kidnapped, and the whole town of South Lake Tahoe get behind this trying to find Jaycee.
That same evening, Terry and Carl appeared on national TV, pleading with the entire country to look for their 11-year-old daughter, Jaycee Lee Dugard.
She's, 11 years old. She's a pretty little blonde, and just some psycho came down the hill, saw her, and saw her she wasn't walking with anybody, and just snatched her.
That's been 13 hours, and that's too long. She's got to be scared.
Drop her off. Let her go back home. Don't hurt her.
I need her home. I need her to come home tonight. Jaycee, you hear Mommy? I love you. And I want you to come home tonight, safe and sound.
But Jaycee didn't hear her mother, and she didn't come home that night on June 10th, 1991. And it would take many, many nights before Terry and Carl would find out what had happened to their daughter.
Bored at home? Head over to Chumba Casino and join some serious social casino fun. With hundreds of games at your fingertips, no purchase necessary. You can play anytime, anywhere. There's a special welcome bonus waiting for you when you sign up. Play for fun, play for free, and you could even redeem some great prizes. Visit ChumbaCasino.com and get ready to reel in the fun. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply.
The Ford Explorer has what you need for the road ahead.
Up to 7 selectable drive modes, a 5,000-pound towing capacity, and an available 400-horsepower engine. The 2025 Ford Explorer. It's all in the name.
When properly equipped, max towing varies based on cargo, vehicle configuration, accessories, and number of passengers. Horsepower, torque, payload, and towing are independent attributes and may not be achieved simultaneously. Horsepower and torque ratings based on premium fuel per SAE J1349 standard. Your results may vary.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
I'll never stop loving her or missing her, and I want her home.
But Terry and Carl were also very focused. They had to get this out to everyone.
They did a very active publicity campaign in the early days just to get the word out and Jaycee's picture so people would be aware of it.
The TV show America's Most Wanted covered the case.
Have you seen Jaycee Lee Dugard? Jaycee's 11 years old. She has blonde hair and blue eyes.
Terry let herself be interviewed on TV channels again and again, trying to spread the word that her daughter was missing so that everyone would be on the lookout.
She's pretty, young, innocent child. And you may like her, but we love her too. And it's time that she comes home to her family. Jaycee is my baby, and she needs to be home. She's an innocent, pretty blonde little girl that's got a heart of gold.
In the coming weeks, fear spread through the small, picturesque town with its stunningly beautiful surroundings. Karen Gillis Tinlin, the principal at Jaycee Dugard School, talks about this in Captive for 18 Years.
It was a summer of a lot of fear in Tahoe. And so parents didn't just let their children walk down the street to go to their friend's house. Didn't let them out on their bikes to just ride freely in the neighborhood. We really did keep our children close to us that summer.
Even among the children, fear spread, as Jaycee's classmates Megan Doris and Nicole Sipe recall.
We were petrified to be alone. We were petrified to have to
scared to death.
To walk anywhere by ourselves, to do anything by ourselves, because we thought we were next. We just thought we'd be picked off the street one by one.
My parents were terrified. I was wearing pink and had blonde hair and blue eyes and was from the same area.
So it could have been you?
It could have. It could have been me.
The entire town was plastered with missing posters which read,
Jaycee is a white female, 4.7 inches tall, weight 80 pounds, has straight blonde hair and blue eyes. She has a gap in her front teeth, a chicken pox mark between her eyes and a birthmark on her right arm below her elbow. She also has a mole on her back and was last seen wearing a pink jacket, pink stretch pants, a white t-shirt, and white canvas shoes.
And since Jaycee's favorite color was pink, Terry came up with another way to keep her memory alive.
There was these pink ribbons and they put them all over the trees in South Lake Tahoe, and it was a sign of, Jaycee, to keep her memory alive and to get people, involved in it. And the whole town of South Lake Tahoe felt personally involved in trying to find Jaycee, and everyone was looking, and they were very emotional about it. It was like one of their own had been literally disappeared off the face of the earth,
But even though Terry felt enormous support from her husband and the entire community around her, it didn't take many days before she fell into the deepest hole of sorrow as it slowly sank in that her daughter was really gone.
She stayed in the room upstairs.
Oh, she was devastated, and first she basically turned to, she drank. She turned to alcohol just to try and, escape from what had happened, and this went on for a few weeks, where she was drinking really, really heavily and smoking, and finally she got herself together one day and decided no more alcohol, I have to be clear-headed to help Jaycee, which she was, from then on. Amazing woman, I think.
No, alcohol wasn't the right path, of course. Although it's not surprising that it seemed tempting to just drink away reality when you don't want to live in it. But while Terry, Carl, and the entire community tried to cope with the shock and sorrow of what had happened, the police continued their work. But were they really focusing on the right things? It's strange, after all, that on a typical morning, in broad daylight, a car could just pull up and kidnap a girl right in front of her stepfather's eyes, and then manage to disappear. Did the police really do everything they could? John Glatt knows what he thinks.
Well, I would say that by not going outside South Lake Tahoe and closing that off, they weren't, initially looking outside that, so it allowed Garrido to get away, And if they'd actually been doing other major routes, north, south, east, and west, they may have picked him up.
But they didn't. So the gray car managed to get out of South Lake Tahoe. What no one knew was that Jaycee Lee Dugard was only a couple of hours away by car. In the next chapter, Jaycee Lee Dugard begins a new life.
For a few months prior, Philip Garrido had been setting up basically a prison within a prison in his garden.
A life in captivity, where she wasn't allowed to leave her prison.
There were no windows on it or anything. There was no way of knowing the time of day or anything like that.
And where one person had complete control over her.
And basically, her life and death were in his hands.
But the kidnapper, a convicted sex offender, was granted more and more freedoms.
He was out delivering printing stuff to customers. He wasn't supposed to go out at night, yet he went out at night a lot,
And not far away, a family's life was falling apart.
On the kidnapping date, on Jaycee's birthday date, my wife would take her vacation. She used to sit home for a week each one of those dates and cry, and she was a basket case.
You've just listened to the second chapter of Girl Missing, about the kidnapping of Jaycee Lee Dugard. I'm Jonathan Rollins. The creator of this series is Tove Freeman Leffler. The executive producers, sound editors, and mixers are Jens Nielsen and Thomas Rajnai. The clips in this episode come from Channel 4, America's Most Wanted, Stolen Lives, AP Archive, ABC News, and Geraldo Rivera Show. This is a production by PodLit, and if you like this series, don't forget to follow Crime by PodLit to see everything else we've done and get notified when the next episode of Girl Missing is released. Thank you for listening.